Hey everyone, today we're going to speak about the most important e-commerce growth metrics. This is all you need to grow your business profits, your business revenue, and really grow your e-commerce business. And this is the metrics I've used and I've found the most valuable. And we're not just going to be speaking about Facebook ads metrics or TikTok ads metrics. We are going to be talking about a few more financial definitions and metrics that really drive the business forward from an overall perspective that you need to focus on. And what I've seen from my experience working with multiple brands and kind of founders, and what has been basically the most successful metrics to take a look at it. But yeah, let's actually dive in straight into it. So metrics that really drive e-commerce growth for your brand. Again, you might have a brand, you might be an operator, or this is going to be the top metrics. And just to be clear, before I actually dive into it, there's no top metrics. There's no like one metric that you need to see. It's like how you can have multiple indicators of what's driving your business growth and having just different levels of it. Because obviously you have a level that is just the app platform, a level that is more the financial aspect of this, more top level business blended metrics, and then obviously you have your more financial metrics as well. But yeah, dive into it. Obviously, this is like in terms of like hierarchy, how probably group them. First of all, it's contribution margin, which is basically, and we're gonna go in depth on each definition. Don't worry about it. And this is basically what's gonna be driving the profit. Is the closest that we can get to profit on like a metric. So this why it's like first, because obviously the main things that I'm seeing is like obviously operators can be, and I've seen this myself like in the past. I just made this mistake. I was mostly focusing on revenue and obviously mostly either focusing on just the ad platform, because obviously that's maybe what you managing or that you really be responsible of, but that doesn't translate into profit on the bank account actually. So after that we have revenue, MER, AMER, AMER, and new customer CAC, AOV, repeat rate, and new customer volume. And then obviously from an account page we have all the metrics that are important here: spend, CPA, ROAS, and yeah, that's like the top level view of it. So let me actually dive into straight into everything. Again, there's no one metric that rules them all. Basically, we need to find how we can connect all this together and which metrics are responsible or are most beneficial for just viewing different aspects of our business. So first of all, contribution margin. Now this again is one of the most important things, just because one of the most important things again, because the closer that we get to profit is your revenue minus your variable costs. And again, we're going to break this down to what that does exactly mean. So after all your kind of costs, your variable costs, what's really the profit there? And this again, the closest that we can get to profit. And the main question that we answering here is: are we producing the revenue that we need to create the desired net in the organization? Obviously, we have fixed costs and we have some variable costs. Are we producing that number from a top line perspective that will translate afterwards into profit, that will fuel the business and that will make the business grow? And again, you can't really optimize for that on a daily basis or even on like a monthly basis or probably or even in a quarterly basis, but you need to just track it so you see some certain actions if they actually translate to that number here. And it's important that it's not a percentage, it's actually a number. And we want to really just see how different actions that we take affect contribution margin. And again, we can't really optimize in a more granular position, but more so in a more top level, and just seeing basically in the kind of 20,000 feet overview how we affect in contribution margin. Now, if we dive a bit deeper on contribution margin, we're going to see that contribution margin is revenue minus variable costs, or revenue per unit, or minus variable costs per unit. So that really helps us identify that we're talking about the AOV here, the revenue per unit, because obviously the revenue is the amount of units sold, times the AOV here. So that's really it. And when we understand the AOVs, how we can manipulate AOV to basically get more out of our customers and produce more profits and produce more revenue and then more profits. And I have here another kind of further explanation. The variable cost per unit can be cost of delivery plus ad spend. So cost of delivery is everything basically that goes into delivering your product. So it can be basically your cost to manufacture it, obviously your COGS, but also your kind of fees, your processing fees, the cost of delivery, everything that goes into getting the product to the customer. Obviously, ad spend, again, that can be a variable cost, but again, that goes into. So as you can see, after we have this, um, it's really the profit that we are generating that fuels the business. Again, and maybe this is not the best maybe explanation here, because obviously this I'm talking about for each unique kind of unit here. Obviously, you can't really go into specific like units in terms of ad spend, but again, that's what I really mean. I want to help you guys understand that basically AOV minus cost of delivery and plus ad spend or variable cost per unit. Now, I'm going to talk a bit on AOV because it's a very important metric, and it's basically the average order value or revenue divided by purchases. Generally speaking, if you can increase AOV, you can increase the revenue because obviously we get more value out of each customer. That really helps us spend more on the acquisition side of things to basically get more purchases and get more customers and get high value from each customer. So that translates nicely into more revenue. Now, I want to dive a bit deeper on the AOV piece because it's very important, and I honestly, Lisa, I didn't even know that, so that was a big aha moment for me. So there are basically three AOVs, if you call it like that, but three different versions of the AOV. So the mean AOV is average, so it's like the sum divided by count. Again, mean, median, mode is obviously a mathematical metric or definition here. So I just put the AOV because it's the same thing here. So you get mean AOV, average, sum, the accounts is like the average AOV that you get. Median AOV is the midpoint of the data set. So if you have let's say 10 pieces of data or 10 AOV values, basically it's going to be the exact middle of those 10 AOVs. And the mode AOV, and this is really important because one of the most important things, is the most common value in data set. So you might have 1,000 different AOVs based on 1,000 different orders. You'll see some orders just basically repeating themselves. That's the mode AOV. So the larger number, let's say that you have 100 pounds is within that 100 or within that 1,000 data set, it comes up 700 times. This is the mode AOV, it's the most common value. Then what gets maybe a bit weird here, or maybe confusing, is the mean AOV, because obviously on Shopify you just gonna get the average or the value of everything. But one high purchase or one high value purchase can really mess the whole thing, and is not representable of the actual AOV of your most or your more frequent AOV. So here I have a screenshot from Triple which does very well kind of showing that. You can see the mean is around 116 pounds, the median 105, and the more 140. So you can see the difference here. You can see the difference probably Shopify will report something like this, whereas you're really optimizing for 140 pounds. That's the most common value. So you can basically have these as your CAC target, or really just focusing on that from an acquisition perspective and still be profitable in a first order scenario. So let me go to the next slide here. So the main goal here is to minimize the gap from mean to mode to become first order profitable. It's super important. It's super important that we get this, because again, this can really fuel your business. It can really help with cash flow, and can really help with that being very profitable in that first order, which is very hard to do. And we need to close the gap from mean to mode. So as you can see, the mean is the average and the mode is the most common value here. So we need to kind of bridge the gap here, and ideally below 20% is what I've seen work the best. But and what obviously I've heard from other people as well. And the reason for that is obviously if we want to decrease that, we have much better chances on being profitable in that first order scenario. Because typically, obviously, that's maybe not the ideal scenario. Mean will be probably higher than the mode. So that's what's really here the case. So again, this might not be the best example, and maybe that's my fault here. But typically, and I challenge you to just go on Triple Well, or just maybe even on Shopify and see your mean, which is probably going to be higher than your average order value. Maybe you have a key seller product that you get most purchases and is like the most common scenario in terms of AOV. Now I'm saying all this just to tie all back, because obviously, as you can see, like revenue was directly impacted by AOV, and so is contribution margin, so the amount of actual profit we're going to be generating after the variable costs, and that's going to be fueling the business. So it's really important that we optimize AOV, and I have here some top level notes here how to increase AOV, like site merchandising, landing pages, offers, bundles, new product development, apps, such cross. So obviously, none of these are very easy things to do, and it's not really easy to increase AOV, but it's very rewarding. Now, site merchandising, you really want to position your top SKUs as, maybe the first kind of section on your product categories, or optimize again your whole site around that SKU, because driving the most sales, the most revenue and everything, and that will increase AOV. Because typically what I've seen is just people just having all sorts of different stuff on the website. Now, landing pages obviously can really increase offers like bundles. Maybe you have two different products are supplementary or complementary, that then they can go together. That obviously increase AOV, and then just getting one product. Obviously, new product development, you're gonna find something again that makes sense for your business, that maybe a bit high AOV, or attracting more of those like high value customers, or those want like a more complete version of your offering. And then obviously upsells and cross-sells, very important thing to do. Now, MER and AMER. MER is super important. I'm pretty sure you guys will be familiar with it. It's basically the total revenue is total ad spend. Basically, what value are your marketing efforts generating? This is the question. Like, we spend all this money on Meta, TikTok, Google, whatever, and we want to have a figure of how is that really translating into the top line, into the revenue. So what value are your marketing efforts generating? Now, I want to maybe, if you can pause here and think, like, what's really the issue with MER, or like with that specific metric? It would be great just to do like a quick kind of exercise here. But the main thing is MER is a very important metric, but it doesn't tell the whole story, and it's good to see from like a blending perspective. But then you will need try straight away to see more granularly, because the thing is here is that we have both new customers and returning customers under this metric. So as you may see, or you may imagine, we need to have different measurements for each of those cohorts, basically, because MER can be very it can be a very different number, obviously, and heavily skewed by returning from returning revenue, basically, which is again much more efficient for the business, obviously through CRM, and but doesn't tell the whole story about our ad spend. So MER is basically doing just that, is acquisition MER, so new customer revenue minus ad spend. So this is exactly the measurement for new customer growth, and that's why it's very important, because the main goal will be we need to maximize returning customer revenue without overspending and without compromising purchasing power by running deep discounts. That's the main thing. The main thing, if we don't optimize for acquisition of new customers, sometimes, believe it or not, your business will actually die because you only have a finite amount of returning customers that will actually fund your business. So we need to focus on that new customer piece. So we have returning customers and we have started building that cohort, then we will actually help in the longer term or in like a few months time be way more efficient in our revenue through CRM or through other bits that we're optimizing. That's why we need to separate new customer from returning customer revenue. Again, the goal is to maximize returning customer revenue because obviously that's where you are going to be getting the most efficient and the most value out of your customers, but without overspending, because we don't want to kind of go all the way to the other spectrum where we just spend too much to acquire that customer that we need like a year to make that back. And without really compromising purchasing power by running discounts, because when we're struggling to hit targets in terms of revenue and profit, the main thing that I've seen is obviously people are doing is like running discounts or with returning customers or doing any kind of CRM activity. So obviously that will be compromising your purchasing power when you're going to be introducing another product, another bundle, or another offer to them, or just maybe the same product after a point. So MEI is a very, very important metric. Again, it really measures the velocity of your new customers and how efficient you actually are acquiring those. Now, I have a very simple example. I'll link that below the video. Is basically what I built for my clients. It's like a growth strategy piece, a forecasting, a very simple forecasting. This one is, but basically is a way to measure your media mix and spend and some of those metrics, and it really helps just have a top level view and forecast your spend and just spot trends. Where do we want more revenue? When do we want to push more Meta or Google? And then I'll impact here. So as you can see, I'll link that below. Obviously, like this can get a bit more complex. I don't really recommend being more complex than that. Obviously, that's a very, I think, a good top level view that 90% of the business just don't have. It's actually insane. But you can track here your spend, your Google, AMR, new customer revenue, return revenue, and total revenue basically. So you can see like, okay, when we pushed or we have that certain promo on June, okay, how did that impact revenue and returning and new customer revenue? And you can obviously see your AOV again with different changes that you are doing, or just spot any trends. The cost of delivery, again, it might change depending on the amount of basically product that you're sending and everything, and fixed costs. And then you have a nice number, which is your net profit. And again, this is very, very good to actually have, so you can see that you basically translate it into profit and how your profit is fluctuating throughout the months. Now, I want to talk about first order profitability. Obviously, that was another metric here. And it's really very important that we, again, try to be first order profitable is really like the main thing that you need to be focused on to drive new customer efficiently, new customer growth efficiently, so you can build your business. Now, first order profitability is, I want to introduce obviously NCAC, which is new customer acquisition costs. So basically, how much you spending to acquire each new customer. And the first order profitability, it really comes down to your AOV divided by CAC, or your first time AOV, or like your first average order value. That's why I have the F here, divided by CAC. So this is how profitable we are on that first order on a blended level again. Like basically you need to see what's kind of your first order AOV, which is gonna be that mode AOV that we discussed, a few slides before, because obviously typically that's the main thing. It's really, the most common value. And basically you want to divide it by your NCAC, how profitable we are again on the first order revenue value. You want to optimize for that specific you want to optimize that specific metric or that specific number basically. So we can see how much we can push, how much pro profitability is based on how much we are pushing on that first order and how much we can scale basically. Now, if you have quick tips maybe about first order profitability, again, this probably requires like a more full in-depth video, but for the sake of presenting the metrics, I thought it was very, very important to actually go through this. Again, optimize CAC around more AOV that we just talked about. Obviously, if we can get a CAC at the profitable level, way below more AOV, we are going to be profitable. Reduce the gap between mean and more AOV. The financial targets is the ad account that reflect top line, bottom line targets. Again, one of the most common mistakes that I've seen and I've done myself. Is like you can be way too disconnected with like your actual financial targets and your ad account and maybe everything there. But again, very much that the ad account featuring top performing SKUs. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but you'll be surprised how many times I've seen people or businesses want to just get everything into the ad account. We're not really focusing on the top SKUs and that the business forward. Now, I want to talk about now repeat rate is a very, very important metric as well. It really obviously gauges mainly your LTV and how much that customer we will basically provide, how much value that customer, will provide in a kind of 3-month or like 6-month rate is how profitable you are on the first order, 3-month LTV. Repeat purchase rate are crucial for measuring success here. Again, you can really show how profitable you are on the first order. Because obviously, especially if you have like an LTV business, typically the main things I'm taking a look at is like a 3-month LTV. Some businesses have a 6-month LTV. So we want to see that repeat rate. This is probably ideal for like supplement brands or subscription brands again, because obviously we can afford to acquire a customer at a loss initially, because we know we're gonna get our money back in like month 2, month 3. Now, some metrics and closing off this presentation basically is I want to really just float this around because obviously that was a new concept for me recently, and it really helped me out. Is how our metrics in that account have an incremental impact to the numbers mentioned above. So the MER, the AOV, the top line revenue, the contribution margin, how this metric can actually have an incremental impact to the numbers mentioned above. And the main things that we want to take a look at here is how we always talked about first order profitability and having that specific CAC number, and obviously optimizing the AOV from this perspective, but obviously having that set CAC number. Now we want to take into our account to set as a cost cap, for example, that specific target number, or if you don't like running cost caps, just have this as your optimizing, have this as your main like metric that you're optimizing for example. So we want to see how spend CPA has that incremental factor to the revenue and the kind of overall business growth. And it's very important, again, obviously these are going to be the most important metrics. Obviously when we are looking at creative, we want to look at like thumbs up ratio and a few other bits like click-through rate, hold rate, so just to get an idea of what's really resonating. But the main thing that will drive your business forward will be spend, CPA. Obviously ROAS in some occasions, ROAS can be a bit difficult maybe from a kind of when we really want to grow, we will see ROAS dropping because obviously we are getting into our colder audiences. So it's not really an ideal metric in my opinion to kind of optimize in the longer term. But again, these are the metrics that account have an incremental business that in that account that will have an incremental impact to all the numbers mentioned before that. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope that was helpful. I know we went through a lot. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll drop that forecast link in the description so you can have a look as well. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I hope that was helpful. Again, focus on the kind of the main things first, and Again, here like the metrics I take a look at mostly, at least we focus on driving profitability in that first order to, help with contribution margin and help with like basically having profit after your variable costs and be very profitable. Drive new customer growth that will obviously translate into return revenue that we can then take and make the most out of our 10 customers, basically have a consistent flow of new customers.